Hello and welcome. Our guest for today, Dr. Terry Oroszi, embodies the spirit of breaking barriers and forging new paths. She is an inspiration to women everywhere. Dr. Oroszi's unique journey began in the U.S. Army, transitioned to groundbreaking molecular genetics research, and ultimately led her to shape Homeland Security initiatives. Let's listen to a conversation with Dr. Oroszi and learn more about her journey. You moved to Dayton, Ohio, and you've been here for
35 years or so.
35 years, yes. So Dayton, Ohio is your home now.
Oh, very much. I left Iowa when I was 17, so I think of Dayton as my home.
Okay, great. We are happy to have you here in the Miami Valley. This is home to amazing people, and I'm sure you've encountered many here.
I have.
Over the years. And as we continue talking about your journey in life, I would also like to ask you a little bit about how did your association with FBI come about? I know you're an author of nonfiction books, and you are a subject matter expert on violent extremists. Would you just share a little bit more about that?
Sure. It was a journey. In 2013, so I'm a professor in a department. We're on the second floor in the Health Sciences building at Wright State. And I wanted to take over the first floor because we were growing and I wanted that floor. So what do? You learn about your perceived enemy. Mm-hmm. Of course, the dean of the School of Professional Psychology was not my enemy, but he was in charge of that floor, so I had to learn everything I could about him. And I found out that he was the chief psychologist at Guantanamo Bay right after 9/11. And I thought, well, there's a connection there because one of the hats I wear is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear defense certificate program that I created based off of my military experience because I was part of the CBRNE team. And so I reached out to him, strategically placed myself. We talked before about staff members having power. With his help of his assistant, I strategically placed myself to when he was leaving the office where I happened to be there. And I'm like, shook his hand. I'm like, oh, I do this. And I invited him to do a video with me related to CBRN, Chem Bio Rad Nuke. And so he said, sure. And I also noticed that he had another colleague that I had a connection to. So we ended up working together. And because of my background with WMDs, we did a webinar based off of the psychology, which is his background, of the people that use WMDs. And that became a book, my first book. And one of the people that did the book, that contributed, one of the contributing authors, was former FBI. And he said, Terry, I have to be out of town for this, and I'm supposed to do a workshop on terrorism. Can you fill in for me? And I had a couple weeks to prepare, and I'm a researcher. My background was, science, and I said, no problem. That's how it got started. And I haven't stopped. Like that point was I started, recognizing markers of violent extremism using American terrorists as my sample group. And I started then in 2013, and now it's progressed to a 20-year study on American citizens charged with acts of terrorism.
Anything that you would like to share about the situation currently for our audience members and
violent extremism in general?
Yes.
It's definitely a problem, as we know. And for those of you that are not aware, in the Miami Valley, we've had a few incidents. We've had more incidents in our community than most. We had, in 2019, we had an active shooter event just a mile from my home in the Oregon district, and which, I had some personal experiences related to that. And then we had one last year at a Walmart, less than a mile from my work. And so that was very traumatic. Fortunately, the people there were injured and not killed, as opposed to the other one. And then even more recently, we had an individual at my university find a dummy weapon that was part of the ROTC training and brought it into the cafeteria and held it up. So in terms of violent extremism hitting home. I think it's hit the Miami Valley more than others, but I don't want to take that away from it happening globally. And it's, in terms of terrorism and looking at terrorism specifically versus violent extremism, I'm definitely more violent extremism over the past few years than terrorism, simply because that's what we're experiencing.
So you contribute to the FBI with your research and studies.
So I guess I kind of swerved from that. So I have a Dayton think tank that looks at 50 of the top crisis leaders in the Miami Valley and the region, and look at, for crisis decision making, which is my dissertation work. And I was talking one day because I'd read this fabulous book on electromagnetic pulse. And I was talking about it to one of my think tank members, and they said, oh, if you're interested in EMP, you have to go talk to InfraGard. So I contacted the president of our local chapter, and he said, come give a talk. So I gave a talk, and he invited me to be a member, and ultimately ended up on the board. And what was really crazy about that is I was invited to go, and so InfraGard is a FBI outreach program through the Office of Private Sector. And so I went to this Congress, their national meeting, and the guest speaker for one of the dinners was that very author that wrote that first book on EMPs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it was like a full circle, and it just so happened that he was also friends with one of my colleagues at the university. They were in grad school together, so we became great friends, and it was fun. And so I went from working at a local level, and I ultimately became the president of our local chapter, and then was brought up to national. So InfraGard has 40,000 or so members all around the U.S. Each member is affiliated with a chapter, affiliated with a field office. So for us, it's the Cincinnati field office. And then we have a governing body, which is the national board, and I'm part of the national board. I am the secretary. So I get to be called Madam Secretary, which actually means more to me than being called president.
Of course, yeah.
I had to watch the whole series of Madam Secretary once I became Madam Secretary.
Right, right. I mean, so many interesting and remarkable topics to talk to you about, Terry. And I just wanted also, while we are on this topic, would like to ask you if you have any message around violent extremists before we move on to another topic, to the general public, especially now that you said it's hitting home, unfortunately, and also for anybody that's watching and maybe having some thoughts that could lead them to that. So any message that you would like to share with our audience members?
Sure. So I actually did a TEDx talk on this topic. So I will say that my research involves recognizing traits that someone who has the potential to become a violent extremist may be displaying, and looking at those traits or markers and steering them down a better path. So it's about education. It's about seeing something, saying something, and doing something. So if you recognize an individual that is maybe displaying some of those markers, understanding that there are things you can do to help them. And the great thing about that is those markers would help anybody. So, it may be being that big brother, big sister, helping them with a resume, helping them finding a job, all these things that make people feel like they're disconnected. Or if they're from, say, a different environment than yours, help them learn the behaviors that they would experience. For example, most people think that if they're from the outside the U.S. and they come to the U.S., they may feel disconnected. But it doesn't even have to be outside the U.S. It can be they're from Muscatine, Iowa, and they're moving to Dayton, and they don't know anything about, for example, the game cornhole.
Right.
But you know what? We have it. We just call it beanbag toss.
Yeah.
So it's about helping them understand what we are about and helping them connect. And that's all it is. It's about connecting and understanding that some of the issues that you may think are typical are not so typical, and some things are more obvious. Like, for example, there's more men than women, which makes sense, but women are considered more deadly. Do you want to know why?
Yeah.
because women are perceived as, initially, in this shows in the way that women are sentenced, their sentencing are always less because they think that they're blinded by love, that something pushes them down that, and so they're being manipulated like a puppet. But and in fact, women do go into it for a different reason. Typically, it's because they or someone they love have been victimized.
Right.
But you have to watch out because they're like a mama bear. And so they go into it with a passion that's very different from a man who tends to go into it for camaraderie and brotherhood.
Right.
Or, they want to be the hero of their people. And some of the markers would also be unexpected, to be like, for example, with Americans, they tend to have a college education.
Right.
And that's something you would not expect.
No, not
And
at
in
all,
fact,
yeah.
the mental health, the percentage with mental health issues is actually lower than you would expect, but we don't know if that's because they don't have mental health issues or they're not mentioned. So in looking at the court records, you would think that if they have an opportunity to get a lesser sentence and they have a chance to say they have a mental health illness, they would use it. So I'd like to think that the statistics are accurate, but it only shows like 12% of American terrorists have mental health issues. Most of them stem from the military terrorists.
Wow.
Which are obviously observed more,
Yeah.
have different experiences like war, so you would expect more mental health problems.
Yeah, that's an eye-opener. So you would say if you see any red flags, or even if it's not as bad as a red flag, but if you have some doubts about a person.
But your friends, your colleagues, your classmates, you, family members, yes.
Seek help.
Seek help. See something, say something, do something.
Do something. Yep, exactly.
That's the secret, do. And the good news is, whatever you do will help anybody, regardless if they're going down that path or not.
So what would you say, where do they get started?
Where do they get started in
With seeking help?
With seeking help? Go online. Don't go to those chat rooms that are sending you down that scary path.
Yep.
Do your homework. If you read something, do the research. Seek help. There's plenty of people around that are there to help you. If nothing else, contact the Bureau.
Yeah.
And contact, I know that sounds scary, which is why we had talked earlier about the children's books,
Yes.
because they are there to help. They have victim advocates and people that can help you. Help you. If you have a friend, same thing. I know that in doing the research and looking at violent extremism, a lot of the parents had those red flags and they ignored them. So parents, if you see something in your child that maybe concerns you, do something about it. Don't wait.
Yep. Yeah. And that option should not be considered as the only option, right? I mean, if you are having certain thoughts, talk to somebody and
Yes.
figure out a better option. That is not
Find a therapist
that's not the track to go down.
or a friend.
Yeah.
Contact me. I can spend hours on this subject over coffee, Zoom.
Yeah.
Could,
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the mind is being changed to such an extent or way that they cannot see right from wrong.
Yeah.
Correct. So I think people around them should be able to help.
but let's think about it. Now, in most cases with violent extremism, it has become very competitive. Like they want to have a better show than what the past, person did. So it has become kind of a game for them, and we need to take it away from being a game and say
Right.
that those are actual lives that you would be.
Yeah. Yeah, every life
Feeling-
lost
yeah.
is changing not just one life, but the entire family generations. We are losing that person they are going away from the family tree, and it's just devastating in many ways. So I think every life matters, and every person who is having such thoughts should think about their actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, before they get into that, and seek help, as you said.
Yes.
Great message. And also, you spoke about the children's book. So that was the next question for you. You are into serious business every single day. You are a professor, you are an author of non-fiction series, just like we just mentioned about Violent Extremists. And how did this author of fiction series and especially children's books come about? How did that happen? And I believe the fiction series has been converted into TV.
It is
episodes.
in that process, yes. The first
So
book.
interesting.
So after I finished the American Terrorist book, which was the second one, and it was right before COVID, and to write a nonfiction, you have to cite and do so much research that it can be exhausting. And so I just got this idea of writing a fiction series, but over the same topic.
Okay.
So it's about a female special agent, FBI special agent, but she's not very good. She's emotional, and she's more of a anti-hero. She does what it takes to get the job done, even if it's not what the Bureau or what any law enforcement agency would want. And she stems from a cult-like anti-government community, so her mindset is very unique. And so it's about the mental health of this woman and how she's trying to do right as an FBI agent, but she keeps making these wrong decisions. Luckily, she has a few people to help her. One is a Israeli arms dealer, weapons trainer, and one is a Indian arms dealer, and his name is Vikram Sethi.
Okay.
Vic Stallion.
Oh, okay.
Vikram Sethi is my friend who said, make me a character in your book. And that character became Vic Stallion.
Okay.
And it was funny because the name Vic Stallion makes it sound like machismo,
Yes.
Maybe Italian kind of
Right.
mafia kind of guy.
Yeah.
And then walks in an Indian man. So
That's
they're the
interesting,
three
yeah.
main characters.
Okay.
And most of the stuff in the books are true, like they're based off of real terrorist groups, the places that she goes. There's actually a international terrorist group in Red House, Virginia. So in book 2, she's there getting waterboarded, and so I really had to do some history on that. Luckily, I knew this former chief psychologist at Guantanamo Bay that could help out with some of those details. But yeah, so it's a blending of fact and fiction, and there's multiple books. I'm finishing up the third one in the series, which is on human trafficking, but it's on skills, not sex.
Now you have triggered our interest in reading your books. So how do we get our hands on your books?
They can just Google me.
Google you and
Yeah.
get your books.
Yeah.
So children's series, I would like to talk to you about a little bit about that. So last night when I was thinking about this interview, I was looking up details about you, and I go to your YouTube and I read the children's books. I started it and I couldn't stop myself because they're so interesting. Maya the monkey, she's an FBI
Special agent, yes. Special agent Maya the monkey.
Maya the monkey. So you think about these situations that children can relate to. And the case of the missing banana, I kept thinking it must be Maya because she's a monkey. She would love banana.
I love monkeys.
I don't
so
want to be a spoiler, but
Okay.
it was a very interesting
Thank you.
plot. Yeah.
I picked monkeys because they're my favorite.
Okay.
And it was, so I'm a grandma. I have a almost 2-year-old granddaughter named Charlotte and a brand new grandson, Owen.
Congratulations.
And
Yeah.
so I did the children's books for, at the time Owen is still brand new, so he wasn't there for the books, but for Charlotte and for other little ones who are afraid of the FBI or law enforcement. And when they have to interact with them or their parents have to interact with them, they immediately think that their parents or they will go to jail or something horrible will happen to them. So I wanted to show that that's not always the case. And so Maya uses her intuition, her team, people to help track down this person who stole the bananas, and I don't want to spoil it either.
Yes.
But I think it's important to say that the person that did was using them to make banana bread, and once the FBI director tasted that banana bread, he decided to make that individual the official banana bread maker for the FBI.
Yeah.
So the message may seem like I'm saying crime pays, but I'm not.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is
Yeah.
just because you do something wrong, it doesn't mean that your life is going to have necessarily a horrible path, that good things can
Right.
come from it.
Right, right. And you even share the delicious banana
Yes.
bread recipe with all of us.
Yes, there's a banana bread recipe. at
Very
the end.
interesting. So I will definitely check those books out for my kids. And I am just so blown away because you have done not only the writing but illustration too. I mean, how many skills do you have under your belt? That's amazing. And the illustration, it was not a very amateur kind of drawing. I saw those illustrations. They are like an expert level illustration, I would say, with all the details
I
that
have.
you've thought about.
I love YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube has changed my life.
Okay.
So I use YouTube to learn how to do everything. I've become, well, I don't want to say an expert in Photoshop, and but pretty good at Photoshop. So I use a lot of Photoshop. I learned about how to do different techniques.
Yeah.
And that's what I do in my free time. So I learned not related, so forgive me, I'm going to swerve a little bit. When I was younger and I would watch car commercials, what really drove me to those car commercials would be how they'd have that vehicle up on like a cliff.
Right.
And it was always about, wow, how did they do that?
Yes.
So when I do things artistically, I think, what can I do? And mostly in my PowerPoint presentations, I want people to go, wow, how did she do that?
Right.
So I'll YouTube tips and tricks in Photoshop or tips and tricks in PowerPoint. And so that's what drives me
Yeah.
in my free time, is to learn how to do things that make people go, how?
Yeah. That's amazing. And we'll come back to that because I don't think you even have free time with all the hats that you're wearing.
If you love what you do,
Yeah.
and so writing the books or doing the illustrations, that's what I like to do on my time off. So that's my downtime.
Okay.
But it's out there, so it appears to be part of my work and it's related to the field.
Yep.
But I'm one of those fortunate ones that come Monday morning and it's time to go to work. I don't think I don't want to be at work. I like what I do, and I don't necessarily like Fridays because if I didn't get everything done,
Yeah.
I'd rather that
Oh,
Friday
yeah.
turn into a Wednesday.
Right, right. So you have a set amount of tasks that you want to accomplish by the end of the week, and you'd rather get them accomplished than go into the weekend and enjoy and relax.
Which
That's the
would
kind
be
of person you are.
editing the books or drawing the illustrations, yes.
Right, right. No, that's so interesting. Thank you for sharing about children's books with us as well. So when we look up Terry Oroszi on Google, your IMDb profile comes up. So you are an actress too?
Yes, and I didn't even
Dr.
tell you
Oroszi.
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opportunity cost in 2022. Please tell us a little bit more about that.
I had a friend in grad school, in my doctoral program, that was not interested, as I knew at the time, in doing films. But apparently he went down that path during COVID because he was a counselor and he was no longer able to do that job. And so he created a short for the International Film Festival that now he sold in millions, and I'm not sure of all the details, but this was his second one, again, for the International Film Festival. And he said when they were auditioning someone to play this part, he was feeling they were falling short, and he realized it was because he had me in mind and with that character. So he ended up sending me a text and said, "Hey, Terry, do you want to be in a movie?" And I'm like, "Sure." He goes, "Well, let me send you the screenplay first and make that decision." And he sent me the screenplay, and I said, "I love it. I would absolutely like to do this." And he said, "Well, you don't have to." And I said, "I do, because I already told my mom." And once my mom knew, there was no backing out of it. And so I played a economics department chair, which was not a far stretch from being vice chair of a academic department.
Right.
But what I did as this actor was not necessarily how I would handle something in real life, so that was a little bit difficult. Had no idea that doing just a few minutes could take hours and hours, if not days, of practice. But I watch movies so differently now.
Right, right. Now that you have gone through the process, you know the efforts.
I do.
Yes. And I can relate a little bit because the amount of efforts we put into every interview program, and when it comes out, in the end, what people watch and what hours that has gone in, behind it. So yeah, behind the scenes.
Absolutely. I know you know that.
Yeah. So you enjoyed the experience of being an actress?
I did enjoy that experience of being an actress one time.
Well, hopefully we'll see you again, maybe in FBI series or something.
Well, hopefully in my series, maybe they'll let me come in and do kind of like a guest walk-in or something for my series.
Yeah.
The screenplay, the screenwriter, she told me that what Carrie did for Homeland.
Oh, okay.
Carrie, is that the right name?
Yes.
Carrie? That I will do for the FBI. So that was really cool. Other than Carrie was the actress and I'm the writer, and usually you don't know the writers, but yes.
But hey, if you need a reporter,
right,
or an interviewer, an Indian-looking person, I'm here.
Got my person. Yes, yes.
I can try my hands at acting. But you are really so inspiring, Dr. Oroszi. I know you request me to call you Terry, but you have earned the degree, the PhD, the doctorate. So I would like to give you due credit for all the fabulous work you've been doing, research work, and you've won awards for them. And I will share more about the awards with our audience members in the program as well. But what I would like to ask you is, you mentioned how you're a professor. You told me you're grandma, and I couldn't believe that. You look like you're still very young. And
I'm a couple years away from 60.
Okay.
So retirement is just
fabulous.
Right around the corner.
Okay. You look fabulous. And congratulations on the grandchildren, especially the new one.
Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
The whole, you get to keep them, you get to spoil them, and then you get to send them back home. It's all true.
Yeah, my husband says that. He's waiting to get to that phase where he doesn't have to worry about the kids as much as we do right now because they're still little. We can play with them and then get them back to the parents.
Yes. So they were over this weekend.
Yeah.
And now my granddaughter thinks that we are the house with ice cream.
Okay.
So I had to let my son know in advance, we do have ice cream. And while she did not eat dinner, I was able to say, do you want some ice cream?
Right.
See, grandmother gets to do that. Oma.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, so you're a professor, of course, the personal roles of mother and grandmother. You're an author, you're an actress, as we spoke about it. You're a mentor. To not only international students, but women in general, women in particular. How do you do it all, Terry? And you look fabulous, as I said, So you're doing something to maintain good health as well. So how do you wear all these hats on a daily basis? How do you manage your schedule, your routine? Any tips you can give for the women, especially that are watching you?
How I manage is just having a calendar and having good people to keep my calendar for me. And as long as I look at that calendar the night before I go to bed and in the morning, I'm not surprised at what happens on my calendar. But that would be how I'm able to keep everything in my mind and just going from event to event to event. In terms of health, I actually am part of, I do cardio boxing.
Ooh.
Which is really about the cardio. So you think of not Rocky in the ring, but the workout he does to get in the ring. And it's at a place called Mint Masters downtown.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so we have to follow you someday there and record what you're doing out there.
I recorded Tushar. I gave him that
You
experience.
did?
Yes,
oh,
yes.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there's always something new that I'm learning every time I talk to you. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I would like to check that out too.
Well, unfortunately, all of the things that I do require me sitting a lot, hours and hours and hours.
Okay.
So actually in 2014, I ran a marathon, the Air Force Marathon, and injured my knee, but that meant that I had a lot of time to sit and not do a whole lot. And I'm just now, trying to get back into that physical shape that I was in previously, but trying to do the physical workout. We all say that, right? Who wants to get up at 5 in the morning, especially after daylight savings, get up at 5 in the morning and go to the gym and then have a full day of work.
Correct.
And it's difficult.
It is difficult.
And
yeah.
sometimes I hate it. It's 5:15. I'm like, oh, please, trainer, call and cancel, call and cancel. I want to go back to bed.
Yes.
But I
yes.
force myself.
Right. So this is how I think about it. I think about it as we being humans, we have these limitations, like you were saying, you know, we think about certain things. On top of that, women have an additional, I don't know what it is, whether it's the way we think, the way we perceive, but we just think that we have to be present for everybody when they need them, when they need us. We have to be able to manage certain things ourselves.
And 100%.
And 100%, exactly. We have to outshine ourselves
Yes.
every time. So what message do you have for women who are listening
So
to
you
you?
mentioned, this is advice that was given to me.
Yeah.
And it was, I did executive coaching. And it was advice that because I wear many hats. And what he said to me was, as long as you understand you cannot give 100% to everything, you can handle it. But if you feel you have to give 100%, then you need to stop now because it's going to be too much stress.
Right.
And so when I do get involved in other things, like with the InfraGard, the FBI group, I remember saying to the special agent that's the coordinator that I would not be able to, if I got on the board, I would not be able to give 100%. And I said, luckily, you know, best I could give you is 80%. And he said, Terry, your 80% is better than most people's 100%, so I still want you. So that's really the message is, if you're okay with giving 60, 70, 80, whatever percent you can at the different things, then you can cope with it. And as long as you're not letting other people down, you can do as many things as you want.
Right. I think what helped me during my career was the moment I realized that, you know, you may not be able to deliver everything perfectly, but as long as you feel you've reached a level of satisfaction. And that is also what Sheryl Sandberg actually says with the Lean In movement. So if you read that book, that is one of the points that she mentions. Of course, we need to have a good support system, but along with that, you know, just ourselves, right? The way we think and way we perceive. So it's better to not wait till perfection is achieved, but rather keep moving on.
Absolutely.
Right? And having that level of satisfaction.
But we also need to make sure that the people that are wanting us to do whatever it is we're doing, that they understand that they can't get 100%, because you don't want to leave anybody hanging.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's not going to make you feel good either.
Correct. And we do our best every time. We try to reach our 100%, but I agree with what you're saying, yeah. Also, you know, the health aspect of women, it changes over time, and we, in our 20s, we are fit. The moment we have that one child, then we suddenly start realizing we are not as strong as before. We are a new human, you know, after that, giving birth to that one human, we are a new human ourselves.
Well, your priorities change.
Right, priorities
So when you
change.
become a parent, you're no longer, in not all the cases, sometimes differently, and especially with, now the roles have changed. Now men are actually more involved in the upbringing than they were maybe many years ago. So, but, you know, you all of a sudden, your child or your children become the primary and your work becomes secondary. And that doesn't go away, does it?
No. Once a mom,
yeah, once
always
a mom,
right?
always a mom.
Yeah. So how did you manage during when your kids were younger? Of course, you have grandkids now, so I think it's a way of lesser responsibility in that sense.
Oh, it's so much easier.
Right?
But we still have a 17-year-old at home.
Okay.
And really all I do is just try to raise her as a strong, independent female.
Right.
That can stand on her own 2 feet. She just got hired. She's got her first job. She's going to be starting in a few weeks. I'm really excited. I don't know if she's really excited, but I'm excited for her to have the opportunity. Kind of related, I did not know how to pump my own gas. I was well into my adulthood.
Wow.
And I didn't want people to know this.
Yeah.
So I would have my husband pump my gas. I mean, he knew, but you know, nobody else did. And it was always something I was uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
So in raising my children, I've always pushed them out of their comfort zone so they don't experience something so silly as that
Right.
with me. So
Right.
here, yes, I will buy that, but you have to take my credit card, and you have to go up in the
Correct.
line, and you have to do all this.
Right.
And you have to push them out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
But after that, you throw them the credit card, and they're off.
Right.
So it's and
Yeah.
getting your first job, same thing.
Correct.
You have to push them out of that comfort. They would rather stay home and
Right.
hang out and play video games or study, hopefully. But you have to push them.
Yep. And this is true for both boys and girls. Whatever
Absolutely.
you just mentioned. Yeah. And I try doing that too. I just sit in my car when there's a smaller store that we have to get something in, so where I know my kids are not going to get lost, I send my teenager, my preteen, go get something,
Yep.
give them the money and then do that. So that way they start becoming more independent and responsible sooner.
Yep. And it's for their benefit, right?
Yeah. Did you have a good support system when the kids were younger, when they were babies, and those struggling years? I think many women find that the most challenging.
My family all live back in Iowa, and so I really relied on my husband's family, my husband's parents, and friends to help. We fortunately had a nanny that lived with us and was able to help, but I waited to go back to college, or rather to go to college, until my son was in kindergarten.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they stayed my priority. And then I was a junior, and when I was pregnant with my daughter, and at that point I thought I could do everything. Even though it was a difficult pregnancy, I
Yeah.
did not think it would affect my grades. It
Right.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Severely affected
Yeah.
my grades.
Right.
But and she was born 3 months early, and then I didn't care about my grades,
Of
obviously.
course,
So,
yes.
but
Yeah.
she's fine now. She's healthy,
Right.
wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have to know your own limitations, and I
Correct.
think that was something that I had fooled myself into thinking there was no way I could get a
Yeah.
bad grade, even if I don't show up for class because I have morning sickness.
Right.
Guess what? You can get a bad grade.
Yeah, yeah. No, these are real problems. So thank you for sharing these with us, because I'm sure the younger women who are mothers or who are expecting, they go through these kind of challenges every day. And coming from someone as established in the career as you now, just looking back at those days and sharing that will really help some women who are listening. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So I think just trying and finding our support system, whoever that is, because even for us, our immediate family is all in India, So
Yep.
we have to get by with whatever we can, like a daycare or friends or.
And appreciate the technology that
Correct.
allows you to
Exactly.
to communicate with your family.
Right,
When
right.
I was in the Army, I was 84 to 88, so I'm 57 years old. We didn't have email. And I mentioned that Christmas story, but I had a similar incident because I was in Germany and I got all my Christmas presents early from
Yeah.
the family, and I opened them up early because
Oh,
you can't wait, and they're
Right.
there and they're staring
Right.
at you and you're alone, and so Christmas morning I had nothing to open, so that was kind of sad.
but you got all your presents. though.
I did get all the presents, but it was just, it's about looking for the positives and looking
Yeah,
at the
for sure,
positives. And
yeah,
now,
yeah.
leaving your family,
Right.
the positives are you can still call them on your cell phone without it costing
Yeah.
a lot of money.
Correct.
And you can FaceTime, Zoom, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And so our world has gotten smaller
Yep.
because of it.
Right, yeah, I agree. I agree technology helps a lot in that sense, although, it's such a pain to get the technology away from the kids
Yes.
these days, but still, the point that you mentioned is really very valid. For us, I think the first generation migrants from like India or any other country, it's most challenging in that sense, because we are now worried about our aging parents back in India, and we are trying to raise our kids here, and we do not have that support system we need, and we are in our middle age, so that crisis going on.
Yes.
So a lot of things, but just your message and your just you sharing these stories really are very helpful. Thank you.
Good,
Thank you,
good.
Dr. Oroszi. Okay, so what's next for you? That is an important question I would like to ask, because you are wearing so many hats, and writer and professor and mentor, so many things, a public speaker, you're a public personality. So please tell us what's cooking up right now, or what you aspire to be maybe 5 or 10 years down the lane.
So, after spending 2 weeks in India with Tushar, my husband and I both said, let's retire here. And it was so much, we loved the country and we absolutely loved the food. And maybe not in that order even. The food was so good because as a vegetarian, your choices are limited here, but they were
that's
exponential
another thing we miss here,
Yes.
Yeah.
And but it was also just the interactions we had with the different communities and the different people that we thought, both of us being teachers, that we should retire there and help Tushar with his mission.
Wow.
Unfortunately, with us now having grandchildren, that we would end up in that similar situation that you are in, but we'll see how things go. Maybe they'll just have to have frequent flyer miles and flying back and forth. We'll see.
Yeah.
But right now, I'd say my focus is more on the humanitarian mission and less on the all about me mission.
Right. And isn't that true for a woman all the time?
The all about me or the humanitarian?
Not about all about me, right?
But we want it to be.
Yeah, well, we want it to be. I agree with you, but we just can't be that, right? I mean, we are always trying to do everything for everybody.
Yes.
However bad we want it to be all about us.
I think we are still at the cusp of women's independence. And I see that difference from when I was younger to when I was in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s and now. But I still experience it. I still experience where when people find out I'm a female, which luckily the spelling of my name is not obvious that I'm a female or a male, and sometimes I use that to my advantage.
Right.
Especially as a female working in security. When my first book came out, David helped me with that. He did a lot of the editing and going back through, and so I made him co-author. But it was 100% my research. So I can't tell you how many times when we'd go and give a talk about it, people would go to him. I even had somebody email me to ask David a question related to my research.
Oh, wow.
And it can be pretty annoying when
Yeah.
I'm the one obviously talking, so it's my work, and they go straight to him. But
Yeah.
you know, he looks a little more security driven than me.
Yeah, I mean, there are some prejudices still going on around women and what we can do, but you are one of those women who has proven that we can be in fields like security and the army. So every time I see a police officer who's a woman, you know, I'm like, in my mind, hats off to you for doing this. You know, women in all these non-traditional fields, I would say, that is inspiring the next generation of women. So hats off to you.
Can I share kind of a story
Please.
about being well, first off, you know, it's about, as female leaders, my opinion is that if you're a female leader and you're not helping other females get to where you are or to push them down, you know, into the careers they want, then you are no better than others.
Right.
And I think the reason a lot of women, when they get to a certain level, they want to hold all that power in is because they think if they share it with these other females or other people, that diminishes their power. And so in my classes or when working with the Afghan girls or the Indian girls overseas, I always talk about giving your power away and how it comes back tenfold. And I know we're limited on time, but I want to share this because I think this is an important message. If I were to say to you that, you know, thank you, you did a great job, and I am Joe, your producer, and I'm like, you did a great job, and you said to Joe, thank you, and walked away, you would, there was no power exchange, right?
Right.
But if Joe said good job, and you're like, you know, I wish I could take the credit, but it's all these other people behind the scenes, and even if you did 99% of it,
correct,
and you're giving the credit away, he knows, he's the one that has been observing you, he knows you did all the work, and he just heard you give everybody else the credit. So next time he needs you, he's going to call on you.
Right.
And those people that are behind the scenes are going to know you just gave them all the credit, even though they did maybe less. So they're going to still want to work with you.
Right.
So in that first example, there was zero power exchange, and you're just still a person. But now you have Joe thinking you're amazing, and you have the staff thinking you're amazing. And it's an example of give it away and it comes back so much more, so much better.
Agree.
And so for those of you, those women, and there's a few of you that I work with, you know, give that power away. Help others, help females, help males, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
empower others. Yeah.
Empower others because it's going to work in your best interest.
It comes back, yeah. What goes around comes around. And I 100% agree with you. We have to learn to give credit where it's deserved, where it's due. Even if it is less, try and make that person feel good. And they will actually, that positivity will help the world, you know.
It does.
In ways that we cannot even think of. But that has to be given out. And also the other thing that I have been a fan of, this statement where I can't remember the exact words, but it's to the effect of your success is measured by the number of people that you make successful, you know. It's not just you being successful, you being at the top of the ladder, but how many more people are you helping with that?
Yes,
right?
Definitely.
Yeah, so agree. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful message. So we spoke a little bit about the Gandhi Legacy tour before. Would you like to share a little more about it to our audience members? How did you get involved with it? That was a very interesting aspect of your profile for me. And you did tour India.
I did for 2 weeks, and it was amazing, and I'm going back in December. So I did that last year. Well, it started in December of 22. We were there for 14 days. And so we spent New Year's Eve there and up until I think it was January 12th. And how I got involved. I have a friend, a colleague, his name is Dr. Brian Pinkinghorn. And I was introduced to him, and he saw my research, and he sent me an email, and he said that my research was staggeringly, I have to use that word because it's amazing, staggeringly similar to Dr. Arun Gandhi's work that he does. Different subject matters, right? I study terrorists, violent extremism, and he studies others, but it's about giving that, you know, recognizing individuals and giving them the skills to better their life. And so he said, I think you should tour India with him and you guys can talk. And I thought, this is amazing, this is wonderful. You know, my life could stop now because I have many moments where I think that it doesn't get better than this, and guess what? It just keeps getting better. So that was a spoiler alert, maybe. And so I end up going, and of course I have to bring my husband because now I've learned that I don't like doing things alone as much as I did when I was younger. And so we were both went through the workshops, or you know, the calls to know what to do, how to prepare. And we're really excited. And then I find out that Dr. Arun Gandhi is not going to go because he had a health issue. And so his son, Tushar Gandhi, was going to step up and lead the tour. And I'm like, well, that's it. This wasn't a vacation. This was a work trip. I don't do vacations.
Right.
And so I tried to get out of going, but fortunately, but at the time I thought unfortunately, it was too late to back off. Everything had been paid for. So I went, and it was the best decision ever. And, you know, so David he works at Patil, so he's a toxicologist, so he works with poisons. And as we've brought up, I work with the FBI, and so, you know, little kids, they find that interesting. And Tushar, although he's not a little kid anymore, he found it just as interesting. So we spent a lot of time together. And we only have an hour, so I can't go into all the wonderful things that we experienced. But it ended up that we had this lovely time. And so I asked him to come to Dayton, Ohio, and give a talk. And he mentioned that, and I think he even mentioned this on your show, he thought I was referring to Daytona Beach, and he thought I was bringing him to Florida. It's a true story. And no, it was Dayton, Ohio. He still came, and that was wonderful. But he wanted to kick off because his father passed. And he wanted to kick off the season for nonviolence for his father, in honor of his father, because his father and his mother started this mission. And so I reached out to the International Peace Museum, and Allison Gregg and I teamed up, and we put on this spectacular season for nonviolence. We kicked it off. We had some family members from Martin Luther King and his wife, Coretta Scott King, and then we had Tushar here, who I didn't say is the great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, and we had a wonderful time.
This message of nonviolence that you brought up has to be carried on, because I mean, it's so close to what you do research on, the extremists that we were talking about. Violence is the way to go forward. So I think this is all connected.
Yes.
And I'm glad you brought this up.
Because his father passed,
Right.
Tushar asked me to be his U.S. rep for the
Okay.
Gandhi Legacy tour.
Okay.
Tours with an S. So if you want to go to the website, GandhiLegacyTours.com. And I made it, so don't judge. I'm not a webmaster yet.
But you have a good video there. It's almost like 2 hours, I think, of your first
Yes.
legacy tour.
Because I know that we're all aging, we're not going to be around forever, and I wanted to capture everything Tushar had to say, because he had been on these tours with his father several times.
Yeah.
So every time he opened his mouth, I was there with my phone, and I
Okay.
was capturing everything. And so I put it all together and created a video. And because I don't like to be in front of the camera, you will not see me, but I'm there.
Yeah.
So yes, and we are doing the tour again in December 28th. Now it's going to be 17 days, all inclusive, because they've made some changes. And
Okay.
so, but this time I'm going back not as a member of the tour, but helping Tushar put it forward. So
Okay. So now we know the woman behind the scenes. And
I
who
love
did the
being
magic.
behind the scenes. I have absolutely no problem being behind the scenes. At one point,
Yeah.
Tushar had joked how I should run for president, and I said I'd rather be the person behind the president. He said a kingmaker, and I said no, a queenmaker.
Oh,
Come
yes, of course.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Queenmaker. Yeah, and so can you tell a little bit about what exactly is the Gandhi Legacy Tour for those who are not familiar with that?
Sure, it is something that Dr. Arun Gandhi started 20-some years ago, and you tour places. It's a humanitarian tour or a philanthropy tour, because most of the proceeds, it's basically, we ask the tour people how much it's going to cost, and then we add to that whatever we give to all the different places we visit. So most of the funds that you pay are really going to the individual locations.
Okay.
And they're either places that were of interest to Gandhi, support Gandhi, or Gandhian philosophy.
Okay, okay.
And yeah,
So if
that's,
someone wants to be on the tour, they can?
if someone wants to go on the tour, please come on the tour. Come spend 17 days with me.
In India mainly, right?
It's 100% in India. We start in
100%.
Mumbai,
Okay.
and we end in Delhi.
Okay.
And many places in between.
Okay. I'm sure there are many Indians who have not seen all of these places too, so
My friend Vikram Sethi, the one I mentioned, the Vic Stallion,
Right.
he said that I've been to more places in India than he has. And he is considering having his 2 daughters join us on the tour.
Right. And I am so interested to see those myself, just being from India.
Are you saying on semi-live TV that you're going to join us on the Gandhi
not?
Legacy
I
tour?
would love that. Yes.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, we'll just have to conspire somehow that I can be away from my kids for that many days. Or maybe I'll try and see if they want to.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, my older kids at least.
Yes,
So.
the older ones.
Yes.
And
So
you have FaceTime.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, thank you so much for sharing about the Gandhi Legacy Tour. So if anybody wants to know more about it, they can go to GandhiLegacyTours.com website. Okay, perfect.
The non-S Gandhi Legacy Tour, those websites are still under Dr. Arun's name.
Okay.
So we're not able to access those. So that's why the S at the end is important.
Okay, got it. Yep. And there is contact information, I believe,
Yes.
there? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So the one last topic I would like to talk to you about is you mentioned about Afghan girls, and that's really interesting. Knowing about the background of Afghanistan and just the challenges of women there, would you like to share a little bit more about the experience that you had teaching and mentoring the Afghan girls?
Yes.
And how did that come about? Are you doing it remote or are they here?
Remote.
Okay.
So I'm doing it from my kitchen or my, usually kitchen because it's pretty early in the morning. But
with the time difference.
Time difference. And that was when I was mentoring the 3 Indian girls I talked about. I think our calls were always at 7 a.m. And so that was early mornings. But in this case, I've been doing it for several months We're on a break right now. We haven't yet started back up, but it's approximately 50 students, and a friend of mine from Afghanistan that's living, she lives in DC area, asked me if I would do this. And so I spent 2 hours, 1 day a week, and it was supposed to be about leadership, which is something I teach. So I had a syllabus, and then I found out quickly after 1 or 2, they don't want a syllabus. They don't really want to understand leadership per se.
Right.
They want to know that someone outside of Afghanistan cares about them. That's it. And they want to talk about their experiences, but just finding out that they have not been abandoned, that we care, that's really all they wanted, and to tell their story. And their stories are not good. Like I had 50 or so students in the class, and it changed every week on what they were available, if they had power on their phones, because most of them were trying to do the class through their phones. And so I threw away the syllabus and said, what do you want to know? And interestingly enough, one of the things they asked me was deception techniques, because they want to know. Then they're lawyers and teachers and college students and just all and college professors that were in this class, and they're all activists. And so they encounter the Taliban members often, and they wanted to know how they could deceive the Taliban when they're being interviewed, so that they don't get arrested or in some cases killed. And so we spent time talking about deception techniques, how to look like you're telling the truth, even when you're not. And one of the games we played, well, first off, is just recognizing looking comfortable when you're lying. People assume that you're telling the truth. But another thing we did was they each had to pick a city in the U.S., and they had a week to convince me that they were from that city. And so some of them did pick a state because they didn't know the difference. But most of them, they picked the city. And what was really exciting or interesting is that they all picked a food. Like they're like, oh, I'm from LA, and the food there, and I just ate this. And I was really surprised at how many of them, and they're from all over Afghanistan, and the majority do not even know each other. And they pretty much all put their, tacos, and I had tacos last night, or pizza, or foods that they've never even tried. They don't even know what those foods are, but they were so interested. So I did say, everybody come, and when you come to the United States to visit me, we're going to go and try all these food places, because I like food. And unfortunately, the last few weeks of the class, we had one class, and they said how they're no longer allowed to leave their homes without a male escort. And I thought that was rough. But then the next week they said they're no longer allowed to go to salons and places, even with a male escort. And then the last class we had before we took the break, I only had a couple students show up because the Taliban had canceled the SIM cards. So and we used to meet for 2 hours, and I had to cut it down to an hour and a half because it was just so emotional. Like, some of the girls had been arrested and tortured, and one was like, her husband had just been killed by the Taliban, and she was able to escape to Germany. And every week, these stories, they were just so heartbreaking. One of them, she said that to get her to quit talking and doing her activism, they sent her pictures of her 3 kids. And she said, what do I say? Do you want to know what I said?
Yes.
I said, I know he did this as a threat to you, but he is somebody's son. He's somebody's little boy. And quit thinking of them as Taliban, as this evil group. Think of that individual and say, thank you for caring for my children. Thank you for guarding look at it in a way that a mother would look at that person. And maybe you will trigger something in them that makes them think, yeah, these are kids, and I get to, remember I talked about hero? And one thing I tell my students and others is, flatter the person, right? It's contrary to what people say. Flatter helps. When you say, oh, you're amazing, you're going to feel more amazing, right? So my approach was not to be intimidated, but to intentionally misread the message and send them that message back. But to be fair, I talked to a therapist before I gave them that message, just to make sure it was appropriate, because I'm not a therapist.
Right.
For those of you that I mentioned, reach out to me. I'm not a therapist, so don't
But you
reach out
have-
to me for therapy. But
right. But you have done enough study that you can
Yeah.
give helpful tips to others.
Yes.
So have you heard back with like feedback from the girls or women that your suggestions have helped them in positive way?
I have not, because again, we've been on a
Yeah.
hiatus, and just trying to find the time
Yeah.
to start it back up.
Right.
I haven't forgotten them.
Right.
I think of them often. One of the ladies was in the hospital and did not want to miss class, and so she made sure that she was able to get a
Wow.
phone in so she could be in
Yeah.
class.
Right.
And again, the 2 hours of hearing this was so difficult, and I still had to focus. Like I still had to function. And there were times where I was just like, I'd get off the call and I'd be crying.
Oh, God.
And so I had to cut it down to an hour and a half
Yeah.
because I still wanted to be there for them. But it was just it was mentally exhausting for me. And at the same time, I felt guilty because it's a mental exhaustion for me, and they're actually experiencing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have a couple of them that I'm trying to bring over here to go to school, to be in my program. So doing what I can.
That's amazing. I mean, these are unbelievable situations. We cannot even think of being in such situations the way these, not just women, but people are. And what you're doing, I'm sure, is helping at many levels, because just as you said, as little as just knowing that someone out there cares for them makes a difference to them. And you being there for hours on end, just listening to their story, talking to them, I'm sure it's a therapy in itself, you know, that gives them courage, that gives them the kind of feeling they need to keep moving on.
And to appreciate what you have in life.
Oh,
we
yeah,
had talked
for
about that
sure.
earlier, about how
Yes.
the difference of the people in India versus the way people are here.
Yeah.
What I experienced in India was that, you see, I'm trying to swerve away because I was getting emotional. People I experienced in India were very proud and thankful, even if they had very little. They were very thankful for what they had. And I think that's something that's missed here in the U.S. by many. Like in some of the migrant camps that we went to, the parents were so happy because their children got to go to school up into the 8th grade, while they're at these migrant transient camps where they don't even have a home. And one of them was bricks. And so they'd make these makeshift homes during the time they're there. And then they would move on to somewhere else. And so through the Gandhi Foundation and others that support that mission, they've created little schools. So they were thankful that their kids were going to have a better life than them. Not necessarily much better, but in their eyes, that alone was enough to make them happy. And I think those kinds of little moments are missed on us.
Yeah.
And like I gave you the example that if you work at McDonald's, if there's somebody working at McDonald's and they don't want to be there, you know it. And they have a job, they have money, they have food. I mean, they can go to school, whatever the case may be, but you can see that they're unhappy. And just knowing that the people that have so much less, were still proud. They walked, they walked tall, and they were happy with what they had, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
I loved the Indian people.
I'm glad you had some really good experience there, and the lessons that you learned, you're sharing with your students around the world. That's amazing too. As we spoke before, it's all about giving out those lessons.
Yes.
That you believe in that. And I think gratitude makes a lot of difference. In the kind of problems that we face here is nothing compared to the kind of problems some other people face in different parts of the world. And so I think having that gratitude, appreciation, as you mentioned, makes a whole lot of difference.
Absolutely.
Right.
And, I've been lucky. I was able to go to school for 50 years. Not really 50 years. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But, it doesn't, having a doctorate doesn't make me smarter. It just meant I had opportunities that allowed me to go to school.
Right, exactly.
And just because I went to school for 50 years doesn't mean I'm any better, any smarter. And in some cases, my salary is not even as good as some of the others. Just teasing. But yeah, I just...
Yeah. No, but I mean, you're very modest. You have remarkable accomplishments, and you're inspiring not just me here, but many women that are watching you. And you are definitely making a difference in many people's lives. So, I mean, I understand your sentiments about, education, how that relates to how smart you are. I totally get that. There are people who are much smarter who unfortunately don't get opportunities, but what you're doing is remarkable.
Well, thank you. It
So
takes a team. Well, we've said, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't do anything alone. And it's
that-
people like you that are giving me the ability to showcase some of the work. So thank you.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am to talk to you today about your life's journey, and you can be sure that we'll continue following you. So your social media, it better be up soon in a much better way.
Yeah, I'm
need it.
not a social media person, so
You just need to hire somebody, as you said, a team. You need a team.
I know I need a team.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I loved talking to you, and as you said, there's little things that we can do that can make a big difference for others.
Everybody has power. People think they don't have power. I use that example, staff, students, they think they don't have the same power as faculty or administrators, but they do, because students can do evaluations, and staff, if they don't want to answer an email on Friday, they have that choice. So just recognize that all of us have power, and that you need power to change the world. And power is not a dirty word. It's okay to want it, because you cannot make change in your community, in your environment, in the country, in the world, without power, and use it for good, not evil.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Oroszi, and we would love to know more about you in future episodes. We can maybe bring you back for specific conversations on certain topics.
Sure.
And thank you again for being here, spending this time with us, sharing all these stories, especially the personal ones. And of course, I have been inspired, I've been touched, and I'm sure, again, as I said, the audience members are very happy to watch this program and know more about you. So we will continue to bring you fabulous guests, especially from the Miami Valley. So please stay tuned with me, your host, Vijaya Patil. And meanwhile, do reach out to me and let me know how you're liking these programs, and we'll continue to put in our efforts to make your life better. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay happy, stay healthy. We'll see you next time. Namaste.